Hello everyone, my name is Ellen McGarity from AMGC. Welcome to AMGC's webinar series, 10 Ways to Succeed in Australian Manufacturing. Today is focused on Way 8, Hire the Right People. We will now pass you over to our host, Michael Sharp, National Director for Industry.
Many thanks, Ellen, and g'day everyone. I'd like to start by acknowledgement of country. And in the spirit of reconciliation, the AMGC acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. We pay our respect to their elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples today. And today I'm coming to you from the land of the Kaurna people in Adelaide, and it's been great to be able to speak with some of our members across regional South Australia in the past week, and certainly manufacturing is on the move. Significantly this week, it's NAIDOC week. And so I'm sure with some of our guest speakers today, we'll be touching on support and works and grants available to support the Indigenous community across the nation. Also today is Remembrance Day. So it was a great privilege to go down to the memorial here in Adelaide and to see the Governor of South Australia paying his respects to our veterans. And so if I can just pass on my thoughts to any veterans out there today, people that are serving and have served, can I say thank you for your service, and it's certainly a great strength to our nation. So we've got some great speakers here today. I'd like to introduce them, and perhaps you'll all give us a bit of a wave as I introduce him. And first off, we've got David Fox, who's the General Manager at LA Services, and many of you will know David for his work in the skills and training support that he's been doing. David began his working life as an apprentice fitter machinist in 1988. He joined LA Services in 2006 as a project manager, and he became involved in larger projects supplying custom engineered equipment for the oil and gas major companies across Australia. These experiences highlighted the impacts and opportunities that such manufacturing had on LA Services as a business. So in 2012, David returned to UTS and undertook a Masters of Engineering degree, researching part-time and focusing on project management in the SME engineered to order space. And in 2016, his role fully transitioned into management responsibilities and the planning of the future for LA Services. So welcome, David.
Hi.
Secondly, Jenine Waters is the National Leader for People Advisory at BDO. And Jenine is skilled at partnering with organisations to design and implement business-driven people solutions with a focus on HR effectiveness, organisation effectiveness, change management, and virtual HR support. And that's certainly come to the fore, I'm sure, Jenine, recently. With over 20 years experience in all aspects of managing people and culture within a range of corporate organisations, Janine's key strengths are in being able to work across all levels of organisations, from helping to set strategy and direction through to organisational design and implementation, process re-engineering and policy development. So welcome, Jenine. I'm glad you could join us.
Thank you.
And next up is Cameron Norton, and Cameron is the National Solution Lead at Davidson PXP. Cameron holds a Bachelor of Business Honours with majors in Human Resource Management and Marketing. He has broad experience over 10 years across both the public, private and startup sectors, and he brings a unique approach to enhancing performance for organisations and individuals alike. In 2019, Cameron was awarded the SEEK Recruitment Professional of the Year that recognised his strong track record of delivering outcomes for clients and bringing value to talent through a focus on quality from the start to the finish. Glad you could join us, Cameron. Thank you.
Thanks, Sharpie.
And finally, I'm glad my colleague, Mike Grogan, has been able to join us this morning, and changes have happened in Victoria, haven't they, Mike? So coming out of lockdown, it's been quite a year, of course, for all of us, but our conversations between the team members over the last few months, it's been an extraordinary time. So I'm glad you can be with us today. Mike commenced as a State Director for Victoria and South Australia and Tasmania in May 2016. He's based near Melbourne, and Mike joined AMGC after having led Sutton Tools for almost 2 decades as CEO. And under his leadership, Sutton Tools employed 350 workers across 3 locations in Victoria. Mike champions skills development and collaboration across the vet and tertiary education sectors, and he's very active in training packages development. Good on you, Mike. Now, a bit of housekeeping, just to remind you all that the webinar today is being recorded and you'll be able to play it back tomorrow on the YouTube channel. And we might have some links on there too from the discussion today that you can share. So please submit any questions that you might have throughout the seminar. Happy to take your questions via the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. The report can be downloaded from the website, and I've got it here with me today, the 10 Ways report. So please feel free to download that from the website if you haven't already. And the report, we had more than 30 focus groups, roundtable discussions, and interviews conducted all over the country with 93 individuals from the manufacturing companies, industry bodies, government agencies, and our universities. Now, these industry bodies represent approximately 370 manufacturers right across Australia. We also completed a survey of 1,000 members of the Australian public and a survey of 1,000 students and focus groups. And we'll talk a bit about the students today. Now, today we're talking about Way 8 in the 10 Ways report. And there's quite a bit of information there, as I'm sure some of you have seen. But we know that at a glance, the report shows us that hiring the right people can be difficult, but it is crucial for long-term success. And Australia does have a talent pool, as well as international hires who could be a good fit for roles right across the value chain. And we know that reaching talented people can require thought about how and where a company should advertise. So I wanted to start on that because one of the first points, and Cameron, I might raise this with you if you don't mind, but one of the first points is identifying the strengths to emphasise in job advertisements. And so perhaps we don't always get the ads right, but I know you've got some experience around that. So could you share some of that with us?
Yeah, for sure. So when you're looking at showcasing your job opportunities or even your organisation in your recruitment strategy, it's really important to think of what's going to be your hook point for your customer or for your candidate that you're looking for. So something which I think a lot of people don't think about when developing their recruitment strategy, their job ads, is what's that one or two pieces of information that are going to hook someone into reading it. So if you, sorry, I just lost you there.
Okay.
So if you're thinking about what's going to keep someone reading your job advert, you need to think of that first 3 to 5 seconds. So it's really important people think about that value proposition. And what I often tell clients is, rather than sitting in a room and thinking about why you think your organization's amazing to work for, go out and ask your staff. So go out and ask your staff, why do you work here? And they'll probably just tell you there's 3 or 4 key things that probably hit the spot for a lot of people, and build that content into your job advert. So it sounds like a very simple strategy, but sometimes simple is best. And if you can find those 2 or 3 factors that really resonate with candidates, which relate to the current workforce, that can be a really effective strategy for being able to sell a job advertisement or sell a job opportunity to someone. But then once they're in the organization, there's that consistency of experience. So they're not coming into an organization expecting one thing and getting something else, which will then lead to turnover because they've been sold a lemon. It has that consistency of experience. So they've applied for a job thinking that they'll get 1, 2, 3 benefits. They get to the job and the organization and they experience that 1, 2, or 3 benefits. And then you're building advocates for your brand because people experience that consistency and I guess that alignment between what you've sold them and what they've received.
That's a very good point. I mean, you've got to include the current team members because, we're all going to be working together eventually. So we need to share that environment and the experience that's going on and share the good news, right? One of the points here it says is that manufacturers should consider their strengths in these areas and emphasize them in the job adverts and for website content. And I know that some of the stuff you've been doing is doing video interviews. Would you like to tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, so video's been a really crucial part of my recruitment experience. So my story has been in the executive recruitment space for probably about 6 or 7 years. And in that time recruited 400 plus executives into local government organisations, state government, not-for-profits, and a whole host of different enterprises. But video was one of the competitive advantages for me as a recruiter to really attract the right talent. So video provides that medium which allows people to connect with whatever it is you're saying at a personal level. So if you think about reading a job advert, it can sometimes be very black and white. There's not much emotion to it. There's not much that really captures your attention unless it's a really good job ad. But I've found video as an unbelievable way to quickly showcase an organization's culture, its leaders, the job opportunities, all within 2 or 3 minutes. So that's something which a lot of organizations are only just starting to think about now. Some organizations have been doing it for 3, 4, 5 years. But for me, the video, and especially if you're targeting students or young people that are new to the workforce, it can be a really effective method to get their attention, hold their attention, and then get that call to action where they hit apply and hopefully join your team. So there's a few different things you can do with video. You can embed it into your Seek ad. You can share it via your social media pages. And again, it comes back to that hook point. How do you really grab the attention, hold it, and then move the person watching it to that hit the apply button, give you a call to find out more about the job, or prompt them to do something. So if people are interested in that, my first recommendation would be to look up Video My Job, which is an app that you can get on your phone. It allows you to create quick videos, professionally branded. You can put subtitles in, different pictures of your office or your manufacturing plant, and quickly create a video, which you can then use for your recruitment purposes. And the other thing you can use that app for as well is communications out to your candidates to let them know what's happening in the process. So you might send a communication of the hiring manager just saying, thanks very much for your application. We've received it. We'll be screening through the applications over the next week or two. We'll be back in touch soon. And something as simple as that, again, from a branding perspective, just brings that level of trust, credibility, and openness with the candidate that this is somewhere that I actually want to work.
Now, just on that, I mean, I think you raise a very good point, but are you talking like having a professional video done? Are we talking about walking through the factory where people can see the environment that they might be working in? Or are you talking just a face-to-face? I mean, we're all getting used to Zoom now. Here we are today. But
Yeah.
How professional does this video have to be, do you think?
Yeah, so my personal opinion is the rawer, the better. Because I think people are used to seeing those really professional videos and it's almost like noise to them now, whereas something that's a little bit personal and a little bit rawer probably has a higher level of emotive feel to it. So if you think about different videos that have gone viral over the last 2 or 3 years, they're generally not your professionally produced videos. They're generally something that someone's caught on a video through their phone. It's been either entertaining, educative, or informative, and it's really resonated with the audience, and that's why people like, comment, share it. So I think if you can bring that human experience to someone through video, that's really going to get you some cut through with your advertising.
And we've all learnt new skills this year, so I guess it's important to make sure you control that mute button.
Very important. And I think that's been one of the benefits of this year, is that the human factor in business has really shone through, whether it's kids showing up on a Zoom call, pets. I've had a few cats come across the screens when talking to clients. So
I've seen that too.
yeah. So I think that's something which everyone can connect to, we relate to, and if anything, it's again building that advantage for you to say, these are real people and people I'd like to work with. I
think that's great, Cameron. Good advice. And we'll be able to put up a link to that app that you mentioned, so people can have a look at that and download it and maybe play around a bit and experience it. But Janine, Cameron raised a good point there around social media and the use of social media to get out to a wider audience and perhaps a younger audience. But there's a second point here we have in the report, which says to maintain a high quality careers website page, and the use of social media is really important. What do you think about that?
Yeah, look, I have to agree, Sharpie. I think there's a couple of things that come to mind there. Firstly, when you are going out and looking to bring the right people into your organisation, one, you have to be clear on what does the right people actually mean. What are you recruiting for? For many of us, we're trying to increase the diversity, not just gender, but in thought, age, all of those sorts of factors. So being really clear about whatever it is that you're putting out in the market, who are the people that you're trying to attract with it? Where are they most likely to be? And therefore, how are you positioning messages that they're going to see? So social media, absolutely. And I'm sure there are some platforms that will hit more my age group, and some platforms that your younger age group will be on. So recognizing that if you're in charge of recruitment in your organization, just because there are certain platforms that resonate for you, that doesn't mean they're the entirety of the platforms that might be available and appropriate. So to Cameron's point earlier, going out and talking to your staff and finding out where did they and their friends look for opportunities, I think is really important. Mm-hmm. And then when you look at those career websites, I don't know about you, but I'm hesitating right now because I'm not sure what our career website looks like at this moment, but there are lots of websites that I go on that I look at and go, wow, that looks like it hasn't been updated for a very long period of time. It's pretty static, and there's not a lot to, again, Cameron's point earlier, that's necessarily going to grab somebody and say, great, I really want to be a part of that organisation. So being able to make sure that that careers website does tell the story of what your value proposition is as an organisation and why somebody would want to be there, mm-hmm. I think is also really key. I think there's a lot that we don't necessarily think about when we're going through and putting ads in. And I've done operational HR roles before where I was the one having to post the ads, and you've got 10 ads that managers are sending to you, and they all pretty much look the same as each other, and you just go through the motions and you put them on. And some of those ads, you might find that you've been using the same text and the same language for 5 years, and you've just cut it and pasted it and thrown it back in. And I think what often happens there is we don't necessarily know how the language in the way that we're connecting through those different platforms actually resonates or doesn't resonate with our target audience. So,
it says here in the report that, if you're focusing on the younger people, the social media's, got to be current and informative, and explain the opportunities for learning and progression over a multi-year period, rather than just posting a current vacancy. So I guess telling a story, right?
There has to be a story, and you also have to recognize that if you're not helping to present that narrative on social media, there are a myriad of places that people are finding out about your organization on social media anyway. If you go on to a social media website and you have client reviews and feedback, that tells me a lot about you as an organization. As an potential employer, I want to know, do you have loyal customers who are excited about using your product over and over again and coming back to you? Or do you have a whole lot of issues coming up there? Because that's probably going to tell me something about your culture. Mm-hmm. Similarly, the language, we will often use language that resonates with us. But there are tools that you can go online and use. There's one I was quickly doing a Google before we got on, gender decoder. There is language that you will use in some of your posts that you might not be aware of are going to appeal to one demographic over another. So all of that needs to be planned and thought through, because at the end of the day, people will look for you on social media, and you're not going to be able to control all the messages, but you need to know what is out there for you.
Yeah, sure. That's very important. It's the story side. And David, you've got some great experience around that. You've been engaging with Liverpool Girls High School and Knox Grammar School and others to look at the skill sets that LA Services is going to need. So you've been out there telling the story of the business and the potential for skills upgrades and more. Tell us a bit more about what you've been up to.
Yeah, thanks, Sharpie. I think, we went into that because we needed to, we thought we needed to connect with the youth better and understand what they were thinking. And I guess as Cameron and Jenine have said, that's exactly spot on about, it was a way for us to reflect on, who we thought we were and what was our audience really thinking about us and what we had to do. So it's been a really good experience to kind of start to connect with local schools and have sort of students here as interns or going to STEM expos or whatever it is. We kind of put a hand up for most things related to students because it is about understanding that demographic better. And then that's actually, become a major part of our marketing now. We're thinking constantly around, what is our audience thinking? And so as Cameron talked around the job ads, we're kind of starting to really think through those job ads much more than we might have in the past, where we were probably just using the same text over and over. It's kind of, the questions that come out of that and the interaction comes out of that has really forced us to rethink how do we do that and what sort of people do we really want. because, you know, I guess applying or hiring the right people is very much on the context of your organisation and what your views are on manufacturing. If you want to stay as you are, well, then it maybe isn't important, but if you're thinking five or more years out, then it really matters about the sort of people you're getting on board. So you really need to be considering not just what you do today, but where you want to go, about the sort of people you want. Yeah.
Yep. And for the benefit of everyone out there today, David, could you just give a brief overview of what LA Services is up to and what sort of skills that you've identified you will need over the coming years?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, obviously the traditional trade ones we want to maintain. So around the fabrication and welding for us, but we're looking very much at how do you bring, you know, Industry 4 type training into that space, which is partly why I'm involved in that pilot that is being run now in New South Wales around Industry 4 training, to really understand, you know, how do we bring that in. And the other skills that have really started to emerge is particularly business intelligence, from, you know, an operations side. We've got a UX designer in now, which is a really unusual one for us. But as we started to move away from paper-based systems, we needed to realise that there's the human interaction with apps and those sorts of things, mobile devices. You know, as we do away with traditional processes, you know, really has to be focused around the people and the human side of it. So that's why we seeked out a UX person, which was, you know, seen as a pretty unusual move for us, but it's actually paying good dividends because she's tied up with marketing as well. So it's really helping us to bring that human element forward in what we do. Yeah.
No, that's good. And one of the key strengths that I've noticed you guys are doing at LA Services is collaborating. You're certainly getting out there and working with the community, not just the schools, but you've been talking with the Chambers of Commerce, and I know you're working with the state government on various programs. So you must see collaboration as a key driver for what you're doing.
It is. I mean, you know, really for a long time, we kind of just wanted our own business and worried about what was inside our own walls. But, you know, what I think we learned out of that was, you know, the external environment shifted a lot and we hadn't shifted. So engaging with other parties, so yeah, with the universities, with government, with local chambers, local government, at high schools and community around, you know, police programs and things like that around youth. It does really open your eyes up to, you know, what's going on in your local community, you know, and that's, you know, really that's, you know, the area you want to be hiring from, your local community, to kind of
Sure.
deal with that 30-minute city priority that's been going forward. So we really focus on trying to hire local people, because it does take away some of the pain of getting to work and getting home. Because you're a manufacturer, you still have to come to the site. So, you know, certainly collaborating has really opened our eyes across, you know, all sorts of things, you know, just what's happening in the local community, as well as what's happening in academia and what's happening at a government level, and you know, where are they going with those big policies and things like that.
Yeah, yeah. Now, I'd like to ask everyone out there to get involved with our first poll question. And the lights have just gone out here. But our first poll question is, what percentage of manufacturers said that a lack of skilled people in the labour market was a barrier to general business activities or performance? So what do you think about that? Punch in the answer. Do you think it's 10.5%, 17.2%, or 14.1%? What percentage of manufacturers said that a lack of skilled people in the labour market was a barrier? And Mike, you know, you've come from a business employing hundreds of people and working with skills development all over Australia. And I know that we've been talking with our members all around the country as well. But the skills uplift is real, it's happening. We need to, again, tell that story. But I guess with reference to David's business, you know, these days, if you can operate a PlayStation, you could pretty much operate a robotics welding machine. So we need to talk more about it, don't you think?
Most definitely, Mike. And just taking Cameron's point as well, that does lead into it, and going down to the workforce and understanding what your competitive advantage is. Never overlook the internal recruitment and internal promotion. I know it doesn't feed you, Cameron, but equally, it's, you know, where you do identify some gaps, but internal people are culturally inside the company, they understand it, and they can certainly get up to speed a lot faster. But it also lets you formulate the job and formulate the ad better, so you understand what that skill gap is. Yep. Very quickly. And skills,
Mike, I'm just going to get the answer to the poll question. So we should have an answer there now. And there you go. So most of you thought 17.2%, and you would be right. So there's a clear opportunity out there. So thank you for that, Ellen. So Mike, I think you're right. We've got to get out there and talk more. So your experience counts. So please carry on.
I think that poll shows it, that, you know, quite often we've got a large pool of skill and labour that's inside the business that, you know, with some training, direction, a few courses can actually bring someone up to speed for those new jobs as well. The other is, and I certainly don't want to come across as saying it's an economic rationale on employing someone, but, you know, too often inside businesses we'll go and buy a piece of machinery and we'll go overseas and look at it, and we'll go around the world and we'll go around the country reviewing it. It'll go to the board. We'll do justifications for, you know, a $600,000-$700,000 piece of equipment. Yet, if you look at employing someone today at a higher level, or a CNC operator, you know, if you looked at it over 3 to 4 years, the dollars that you invest are exactly the same. And I think we don't put enough effort into actually identifying and looking at it. And I'm not saying we should treat people as commodities or investment, but it demonstrates to finance why you put so much effort into your recruitment, and going out and understanding it, talking to professional companies on what can do, getting the right soft skills, getting the right profile, and I mean profile of an individual that fits into your business. Mm-hmm. So they're some of the key points. And, you know, then you do have a look at those skills, and getting someone professional to look at those skills and skill gaps really pays dividends down the line. Yep.
So there's opportunities across the board. I wanted to touch now about the current week being NAIDOC week, and today with Remembrance Days. You know, we know that there's opportunities out there through Veterans Affairs, and for Indigenous people as well, there's various programs. So we might touch a bit on that. Cameron, you've got an Indigenous program through your organisation. Would you like to explain a bit more?
Yes, I'm very fortunate to work for Davidson, which has a partnership with Yulari. And Yulari is an organisation that empowers Indigenous children through education. So we have a really close connection with that organisation through our group CEO, who serves on the board. We also have a number of initiatives that support Yulari to expand their impact. So that's things such as employee donation programs. And we also actually base our employee feedback program on the concept of a yarning circle, which is you know, something that's really strong in Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander culture around being able to provide feedback openly, honestly, and respectfully. So yeah, Indigenous culture's very much woven into what we do at Davidson through our partnership with Yulari, but we also utilise some of the, I guess, concepts throughout the organisation as well to help improve performance.
One of the things we talk about is putting notices up on various job boards, and most of that is online these days, of course, but I think it's more than just TAFE and others. So I'm sure Veterans Affairs have those sort of links, but you can also go to Soldier On, where they have information for recruitment into industry as well. But Jenine, there's such a broad variety of where people can get engaged, right?
That damn mute button. Look, there really is. And I think, again, it's really around a lot of what we're talking about here comes back to having a recruitment strategy and actually being really clear about how you want to go to market, who you're looking for, and where you're going to find those people. And I think, to your point, Sharpie, there are a myriad of places that you can go to that will be relevant for you. And it's about spending the time and actually thinking about who are you targeting and what are the best places, and then narrowing down your efforts into those key areas. Because the fact of the matter is, there are a myriad of places, and it can be quite distracting if you don't have a clear plan around how you're going to do that. So I think really, like I said, a lot of it comes down to being planned in your approach and actually thinking through where you really want to be present in the market.
Yeah. Now, I've mentioned that I'm in Adelaide today, and I've got quite a few texts coming through and a couple of emails just now asking if I'll come and visit the some of the factories here in town. So, of course, pleased to, and look forward to catching up with many friends here in town and going out to regional South Australia as well. So feel free to drop me a line. We've got some great questions coming through, so keep them coming. But I'll put this out to you, David, because Colin Thomas at Flinders says, how important is the company's profile and presence in the community in attracting people to the organisation rather than just to the specific job, including factors like community responsibility, sustainability, renewable resources, corporate communication, so on and so forth. It's really important, don't you think, to have a community profile for your business?
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's immensely important. Not something we realised until we started on this journey about how do we change ourselves, and yeah, getting involved in the local community. And it doesn't mean that we kind of stick to people like us. Typically we don't. We make sure we are really diverse in who we deal with. And obviously for us, we kind of lean towards people that are organising around youth and school programs and things like that, because we learn how they I guess, as Jenine says, how they deliberately go in with a purpose into school. So that's kind of what we're working through now. Having played in the space for a little bit, we're really starting to think about what is our purpose, what is our play in that area, what are we trying to achieve, and how do we connect with other local community businesses that are doing similar things to help build a profile and awareness. And it certainly has helped us in terms of getting a profile in our local area. And I think it's a really important thing to do is develop that brand, and it has to be a real genuine brand. You really believe in what you're doing, and don't try and do the things you don't believe in, because that's not going to work and it's going to show through. So we just stick to our core. Yep.
Just in a practical way, David, for the benefit of everyone out there today, how did you go about approaching the schools and the chambers of commerce? Did you go with a brochure? Did you make a phone call first? Was it on a social media post? How should people out there go about getting more engaged in their local community? So
certainly, a great place for this area anyway, for the sort of Bankstown Revesby area, was the Chamber of Commerce, a very good chamber here, and also local chambers sort of up the road at Liverpool is another really good one. So just being in some of those networking groups is a way to start, and going to events that maybe don't seem sensible. How I got started in education was I went to a UTS event which was called Steampunk Girls, a launch for a program around girls in STEM, and I thought, well, maybe I should just go to that to see what might come about. And actually that's where I connected with someone who's really helped me get into the education network, because I met a teacher and I was kind of talking about the ideas of being a workplace that could integrate with schools, and that work integrated learning model picked up a lot of interest. So she asked me to write that down and send it to her, and she distributed it through an education network, and that's how I got into the network there. But by going to an event that seemed sort of almost ridiculous for a GM of a welding and fabrication company, but hey, that's how you meet new people.
I guess what you're saying is put yourself out there, fly the flag for the business, tell that story, and connect with people. Collaboration again, David. You do it so well.
Yeah.
You do it very well. A couple of more questions, and please keep them coming. This is for everyone. Mike, I'm going to throw this to you though to start with. How has the pandemic changed recruitment for the better? And will some of the tools we now use stay for the longer term? So I guess, just like we're on Zoom now, how do you think our members out there are engaging more on the recruitment side? Because certainly the companies that we're dealing with are growing, they're needing more staff. We've got things like JobKeeper and JobSeeker that have been having special impacts, and we're seeing some news around that in the last few days. But what's your thoughts from talking to the members?
I thought you were going to pass that one to Cameron, actually, to start with. Certainly, we are seeing a pickup in activity on the job front. We've gone from a very defensive mode where people are trying to retain people in the workforce and just looking for the next pay packet, now to actually looking forward, filling skill gaps, but equally I believe people are just being more diverse. They're looking at different ways of doing things. And again, I'd go back to looking at that internal promotion type activity. But certainly the pandemic has allowed us to look differently. The disruption of these sort of things makes you do things differently, and recruitment and retention. I think that's something that now people are understanding, that people poaching, good staff is, whether it be a football team, you've got to retain your good people as well.
And we know that out in the regions too, Mike, we've been talking with our members in regional Australia about sharing resources. Perhaps you don't have to buy the same equipment as the factory next door or down the road. And perhaps in addition, you can look at sharing staff resources too. Perhaps you only need the welding resources of your key staff 3 or 4 days a week, and you could collaborate with another firm down the road to share those resources in these times, you know. So it's
I think
we
that
will
applies to sort of HR type roles, or roles that, you know, smaller companies can't sustain a full-time person.
Yep.
And certainly that's been taken to the extreme where you are at the moment, with a few of the larger shipbuilders in Adelaide looking at sharing some of those resources as they go through the ups and downs of a continuous shipbuild model.
Yep. And I know, David, you've had some experience recently with JobKeeper in particular, but what's your thoughts moving forward around those sort of programs, and how does that help sustain your business?
Yeah, I think, you know, the JobMaker is a really interesting one to get sort of things up and running. And also the boosting apprenticeship commencement scheme is a really interesting one. There's a really great subsidy there, and it's not just apprenticeships, it's traineeships. So that gives it a much, you know, wider bandwidth to kind of adapt both from an office and factory point of view. So that's certainly a model we're looking at the moment about how we go into 21 with that scheme, which runs from, you know, I think from around October to September next year, and then it's 12 months from whenever you bring them on. So I think, you know, there's some really good stuff going on at the moment. I certainly think that boosting apprenticeship and traineeship one's a really, really good one for manufacturing businesses, because it has got a bit of bandwidth about how you do it, and it's not so constrained with the rules.
Yeah.
Yeah, the JobMaker is a little bit more constrained, but it, you know, if you can find the sort of person that fits into that, that's a great way to get some skills on board. So yeah, I think there's good support at the moment.
Yeah, and you'll all remember from the earlier series that we talked about APR intern, and so I'm sure we'll put a link up there for you to connect with that site. But that's now increased, so the government will support interns up to 90% of their salary. So it's a bit of a no-brainer. But if you need support, just send me an email and I can connect you to the team at APR Intern to look at those sort of opportunities if that might fit with your business. So there's growing opportunities out there, which is the good news. We have another question here from Peter. An important aspect of attracting and retaining the right people is to be an employer of choice. What are some of the attributes of an employer of choice? Now, Cameron, we talked a bit about that at the start, but what's your thoughts around that? How can people demonstrate that, you know, they are an employer of choice?
Yeah, so I think it gets back to the demographic that you're targeting. So thinking about what is it that will appeal to them. So I think this year, you know, job security probably went up to #1 compared to last year, which might have been flexibility in work hours or something like that. So I think it's probably doing a bit of an analysis around not only what your staff are saying as your key competitive advantages, but also having a look at what your competitors are saying in their job ads. So they might actually be revealing their secrets in their job ad, and there might be 1 or 2 things which they're not offering that you actually do, which the demographic that you're targeting actually want. So if you can find those 1 or 2 things, I think that's probably where I'd put my attention. But from a best practice employee value proposition perspective, you know, it will come down to, you know, salary levels, flexibility in work hours, culture, and being able to really describe the culture rather than just saying we have a great organizational culture. Everyone says that. So what's the cut through point about your organizational culture that makes it particularly special?
Now, we heard that before, Jenine, around will some of these new things we find during the crisis continue? And I guess some of that is working from home. You know, if I have a team of design engineers and they've been working from home, but, you know, the feedback that I've been getting is that the productivity has actually gone up. So how sticky do you think this is? How will we get people back to the factory, and what's the few, you know, what's the next 12 months look like in your view?
It's a really interesting question, Sharpie. If I could just add something to what Cameron said earlier around culture first, and then I'll specifically address that. So when you talk about best practice and being an employer of choice, I think one of the most critical things is that culture, and at the center of that is leadership, and making sure that you have well-trained, well-developed leaders in your organization. They will create the culture that, regardless of whether you're on a list of best employers or not, will be what you hear in the marketplace, because it's not just about going and filling out a survey and getting on a list. your best people in your organization who are out there talking to their friends, their family, their connections, they are the people who are going to help build your market presence from a recruitment perspective. So recognizing that your leaders are really critical to creating that culture, I think, is a really important part of understanding what it takes to be a best employer. But further, sorry, to your, I just had to say that it's my, you know, it's one of the most critical things I think you can do as an organization. But in terms of what we're going to look like in a year, it's a really interesting discussion, and I'm having this with so many of our clients. There are so many benefits, I think, to what we have learned over the last 5 months in COVID. And, you know, I personally have been working from home. I managed the homeschooling with my 3 children through all of that. There were highs and lows of it. And we're also grappling with, well, what's it going to look like in 12 months' time? And I think I'm going to draw back to what I said earlier, which is what I think organizations need to do right now is be planful in what that looks like, because right now I think, you know, that swings, the pendulum will swing, and, you know, there'll be that push to, you know, come back, I've missed you, I haven't been able to see you, I want to know, I want all my people around me. There's that tendency to say, okay, well, as we get back to normality, I want to see more people, and I think that's valid to a degree. But the most important thing through this will be actually take the learnings that your organization has had, and it will be slightly different for each organization, to understand what worked really well. How did you collaborate more effectively in many respects? How did your productivity increase in many respects? And then what were the things that you missed, and how did it maybe impact your culture more broadly, so that whatever you come up with in 12 months' time is actually taking the best of this experience, and isn't just a knee-jerk reaction, or just letting it, you know, wait and see what happens and just landing wherever you land in 12 months. So we're spending quite a bit of time helping people at the moment think about what would they like it to look like, as opposed to just what might it end up looking like if we don't take a specific planned approach to it.
So you can hear the passion coming through from our speakers. So feel free to connect with all of us on LinkedIn, and we can take questions on LinkedIn at, you know, following this. So feel free to reach out to any of us at any time. But you bang on there, Jenine, because Carl has just mentioned here, working from home is okay now with existing workforces where trust and capacity of output is already understood. But when the workforces all start to transition and change, it will require much more rigorous processes and measures to ensure that performance is maintained. So I guess, again, it's sharing that story, encouraging each other, getting through this crisis, but monitoring and measuring as we all should in our business.
Absolutely. I mean, I had a team member start the day before we made the decision that we were all going to work from home, and I've had new team members start in the last couple of weeks where, you know, where we are all working still from the majority from home. So I think, again, it's around that planful approach and saying you can create the culture that you want, you can ensure productivity, but you have to do it by actually thinking what do you need to be successful in an environment where there is that level of flexibility in working from home.
Yep. Now, I want to mention that in the report, you'll find some of the information that we're talking about. Many of you met Katie O'Connell, our Director of Research, who travelled around the country as part of this publication, getting the results for the surveys and so much more to publish our 10 Ways report. And if you have a look on page 53 of the 10 Ways report, you'll see some of the more detailed information around some of the points that we're discussing. So I'd encourage you again to download that and have a look at the detail as well. But David, John has just typed in here that 2 quick tips from his own experience in manufacturing HR is being deliberate in the recruitment for attitude and the cultural fit. He thinks it's critical. And he also says, don't look for a mirror of yourself. It limits your work group diversity. So I guess it's, you know, they're 2 key things to look at when you're recruiting the right people.
Yeah, I 100% agree. You know, I think being really deliberate. So just as you are in the business context, you know, where to play and how to win, drawing on that book. It's the same thing in recruiting now. You have to be very deliberate. You have to understand where you want to play and how you're going to win to get the right sort of people in. Mm-hmm. And yeah, certainly, you know, the last few people I hire, if I think through who they are, you know, as I said, you know, a UX person who will happen to be an engineer in the past life, but you know, a really different sort of person, and a high flexibility model for her that worked well for her. And then a more recent graduate we took on board, and the reason we took her on board, or what won her the job, was her personality, just outbound personality. I mean, I don't even know what marks she got. I didn't even look. I wasn't interested in that. You know, we needed someone in engineering. That's a bit of a commodity. It was more around her personality that won the job, because it was in bids and tenders. So you wanted someone who was very outgoing and customer centric. So
that cultural fit. Got to have the right team.
Yeah, very, very different to what we're used to in the past, where it was very much around engineers and spreadsheets.
Yeah, and you've talked about, you know, being in a welding environment and traditional engineering. You know, you've had to look at new ways of promoting this, not just the skills, but the environment, the cultural environment, but the working environment too. You know, I know you've been looking at such things as an air-conditioned workshop. So I guess it's looking at all these things to grow the business and look at the opportunities to recruit the right staff.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, yeah, looking at differentiators in the human aspect is part of what we think about now. Rather than just being, you know, a resource in the world and that's all the way it is. I mean, what sort of physical environment are we putting around them, and how do we get a blended environment between that hardcore manufacturing and the designing goes on as digital kind of starts to blur the lines between, you know, hard fabrication work and the engineering work. We've got to start getting, you know, those two different people working together to bring, you know, systems online.
Sure.
So that blended work environment's a big challenge for us and an ongoing conversation still. Yeah.
Good work, mate. I'd like to go to our second poll question, because what we're going to talk about now is offering internships and work experience. And I know that you guys have got some pretty broad experience around that. So if we pull up the poll question, I'd like you all to have a look at this one and give us your thoughts around this, because the AMGC survey showed that young Australians think internship programs would make manufacturing even more attractive as a career choice. Do you think that was yes or no? Did it show that? Would more young people see manufacturing more attractive as a career choice? Yes or no? And I think, you know, we should talk about, someone here has put, where do mentors fit in? And I talked in one of our earlier seminars around the apprenticeship that had just started with a young girl straight out of school down in Bega at a company called True Built Kitchens. So I highly recommend you look at that interview on the Manufacturing Academy site. At the Manufacturing Academy, we've been able to interview business leaders all around Australia who have been able to share their experience in growing the business. But on this occasion, it was great to talk to a fellow who was getting ready to retire, and this young girl who had just started with was his 8th apprentice. And he was so excited to be able to train her with the new skills and the new equipment that was coming through for kitchen manufacturing. But back to the poll, let's get the answer there. Oh, yeah, so there you go. The answer is yes, and that's significant, isn't it? Okay, so, and now if we're talking about offering internships and work experience, Mike, you know, from employing hundreds of people to talking with our members that might only employ 3 to 5 people, the mentoring is a key thing, don't you think, across companies big or small?
Mentoring, internships and work experience, they are integral to all of that type of thing, because basically then you're getting out to talk to the influencers, being able to attract and retain young people. You know, there is still some of that old culture that manufacturing is dull, dirty and dangerous, whereas it's not. Being able to go back to Cameron's point on some of those video clips for a clean workshop, a happy work environment. The number of times I've come across young people that say, you know, Dad arranged for an apprenticeship in construction and I'd started it, I left school, or plumbing, and I didn't realise you had to work outside.
Okay.
That work experience issue. Equally, I won't say it's a try before you buy. I think internships, especially in law firms and maybe some of those other companies out there, maybe, you know, have got a bad name as being, you know, free labour. But in manufacturing, we've got a good track record of using it as an opening to be able to attract young people into the trade and into the companies that we represent. And we've seen tremendous, actually, results with it, where companies, one company that we've dealt with, the sheet metal company down here in Victoria, young person come in from university, did their work experience type internship, and you know, it was a tug of war on trying to keep them there rather than let him go back and finish that last year of his degree, you know. And he was working there on Saturday mornings on an ongoing basis. After he graduated, he had a position there. So he hit the ground running. And again, I'd go back to that. It works both ways. Try before you buy. Have a look at it, what that work is, and that work environment and culture.
Yeah, and Jenine, we talk about manufacturing being so much more than just production. The skills that manufacturing companies need today are broad, from design engineering right around to sales and marketing. You know, we've got to be able to make stuff, but we also need to be able to sell stuff. And so when you're looking at such a broad range of skill sets, you know, that ability to put that story out there and post the right job advertisement is a key thing to doing that. But if we're getting the apprentices and the likes, it's got to really add to the benefit of the whole manufacturing community, don't you think?
Not just to the manufacturing community, but to Australia as a whole in terms of being successful. You know, you look at it and think about what you can learn through formal education is fantastic, but let's face it, we all know that the majority of true learning happens on the job. So for us to equip our younger generations that when they've gone through their formal education, at the same time they've actually been learning on the job, they've got real insight into how their skills actually apply in the real world. I think one that lifts your profile within the manufacturing world to say, you know, we create the talent for the future through these programs, but two, it also just equips our next generation to be far more valuable in the workplace than they're going to be if they're just coming through their formal education without that opportunity to really understand how their skill sets can apply. I wish that back in, you know, when I did my degree in psychology that we had internships into HR, but in fact there are many careers that are really difficult to get into when you're straight out of uni, and the more I think we can do to create those opportunities and those endpoints, I think it puts us in very good stead to build our brand in the market, and to have that then those same people thinking about you when they've got 10, 15 years worth of experience, even if they don't translate to taking a job straight after their internship and joining with you, they still have developed an insight into your organisation that is going to reflect in the decisions that they might make in 10 or 15 years, or in the discussions they have about your organisation out in the market.
Yeah, very good points. Now, one of the things I've been doing at each of these seminars is asking our panelists about any good books or podcasts they might be listening to, a good book that they could recommend for people out there to maybe go to their local bookshop and pick up to learn something new. But David, I just wanted to start with you around, you know, apprenticeships have changed over the time, and, you know, from your time on the factory floor and coming through, what's, you know, any good stories about what you've seen now as the apprentices come to LA Services, and the change in attitude perhaps, or maybe expectations of the business compared to the apprenticeship starting on? Any good stories there, mate?
Yeah, I think, you know, one of the really interesting one is, you know, we did a survey of our apprentices a while ago, probably 2 years ago, and sort of said, you know, how's it going? What could we do to it? And they all came back and said, you know, we want more diverse skills.
Okay.
So we set up our own substituting welding training. So we've got a guy come in 1 day a week from outside to train specifically around welding. So these are fabricators, but they wanted diversity across the welding as well, and just weren't getting that in the traditional pathway. So yeah, we've supplemented that, and that's been a really good outcome, I think, you know, for one of the things in terms of that very traditional space. And I think diversity in skills will become more so as digital encroaches more on that factory floor side of what we're doing. Yeah,
I think that's a key one. Yeah, diversity in skills. That's a good one. And any books or podcasts that you get involved with, David?
I mean, I'm sort of a book person, I guess. Delivering Happiness was an interesting one, Tony Hershey. That was around, you know, building a business on passion and purpose, and then what sort of people do you want around you, and that includes, you know, the people who raise capital for you and things like that. You know, so you don't get tangled up with the wrong crowd, so to speak. Okay. And I think a really good one for now is Great by Choice, another Jim Collins one.
Yes.
But mention as much, but that's a really good one because it's about the performance with an external environment in mind, a shifting external environment. So it's a great book for now to go back and revisit, because we've had, you know, one of the biggest upsets in external environments for everyone.
Absolutely.
I think that's a big one. And then so what sort of people you need for that team that's going to do the distance, last the distance, the long term.
Oh, good. No, that's good work, mate. And we'll be able to list these on the YouTube channels. But for Cameron, is there any, you know, one, if one of our small business members out there said, is there one thing I could do to change the way I go about things? What's one of the key things that you tell people?
Yeah, so probably one of the key things I think, and we've spoken a lot about the attraction of talent, but probably not so much on the assessment of talent. There's a really good book called Power Hiring by Lou Adler, and that's all about how to find, assess, hire, and then keep great talent. So that's a really good resource that is applicable to anyone needing to hire staff.
Okay.
And probably the only other element I'd add would be, and people can connect with me offline post this webinar, is looking at psychometric assessment. So whether it's personality assessment to understand what the genetic makeup or personality makeup is of potential hires prior to obviously bringing them on board. And then the other element is we actually offer a safety risk assessment as well, which is looking at attitudes towards safety, and that can actually decrease safety incidents. And we've got one client that we've rolled that out to, that's reduced incidents by 53%. So that's another important factor in the attraction assessment piece, is if you can get it right at the start, you'll save yourself a lot of headaches, you know, in the years to come.
Yeah, and creating a safe working environment is good for everyone. So this is good. And Janine, that one tip that you might say to people, what's one of the key things that people could take away from today's seminar?
Look, I think, you know, what we've been talking about today is again, a lot about attraction and how to go out and find the right people. And I think it's a really good place to think about things. What I think is equally important is that you recognise the amount of investment that you put into bringing people on board, not just in the actual recruitment process and the time and energy it takes to do that, but in the time it takes to skill them to a level where they're really productive within your workplace. I don't think you can have a good recruitment strategy that doesn't also have a broader talent strategy that looks at truly how do you retain people, what is the culture like within your organisation, when people are leaving, why are they leaving? Because otherwise you find you can get great at bringing them in, but if you're not good at keeping them, then essentially it's you're throwing good money after bad. So I would really be focusing on the broader talent discussion and never just looking at it in one narrow part of it. It's got to be the full picture. That would be my tip. In terms of a book,
yes.
I'm a big book reader. I will say we do have In Business with BDO a series of podcasts, and I did do one on culture. So by all means, go and look that up and have a listen to that, because it is one of my passion areas. But the book I would recommend is a book called Powerful by Patty McCord. Now it's all about culture, and I think it's a really easy read. I listen to it, but I also have the physical book and I flick through it all the time. The premise of it is really about the fact that we put a lot of processes in place. HR is particularly good at this. We put a whole lot of processes in place that create complexity for businesses, and you know, and tick box exercises without really understanding what's the outcome we're trying to achieve. And I think if businesses could spend their time, certainly from a HR perspective, thinking about what are we trying to create, what is the end we're trying to achieve here, and how can we reverse engineer to get to the right sort of processes that are genuinely helpful in moving organisations forward, I think we'd be better workplaces all round. So that one's a great.
Thanks, Janine. Now look, there's some great tips out there, some great books. And Mike, you've got some great books on the shelf there, I can see behind you, and you've got a great plug for the Manufacturing Academy. I've got to get these slides up pretty quick, but any tips?
Yeah, there is, but just very quickly, I'd just like to touch on your comment to David about young people and apprentices and young people coming into the workforce today. I had a meeting a few months back with an old grey-haired manufacturer, and he was complaining about young people today, you know, motivation, getting them to work, etc., etc. Those comments are exactly the same as they were 46 years ago when I started my apprenticeship. I think young people today they're hugely motivated. They've got a lot more challenges as far as getting jobs than we ever knew how to. But they bring to the workplace some tremendous skills that need to be embraced. Books, I think, doesn't everyone have, you know, the 10 ways beside their bed? They can read that. But
of course,
not beside the bed is actually a horse book, and it's to do about ownership and sustainability and ethical, and it's also touches very heavily on bringing another horse into the herd and a lot of the things you've got to do. And I think recruitment's very much like that. You are bringing someone into the herd, and herd dynamics and how we look at those things is just the same as bringing someone into the workplace, and it's a team. They all bring some skills and other attributes to it. Having everything the same doesn't work.
That's very good. Now, if we can bring up the slides, thank you, Ellen. And to Mike's point, there's plenty of information on the Manufacturing Academy, so thanks for the banner in the background there. I'd also recommend you get on our website and have a look at the AMGC newsletter and become a member. But let's talk about what we've done today on how to attract talent. Identify the strengths to emphasise in job adverts, maintaining a high quality careers website page and the use of social media. We talked all about that. Ensuring good coverage on the online jobs boards. You'll find much more of this in the report, so download it. Working with other manufacturers, I think collaboration is such a key driver across everything that we do. The more we can share and collaborate, the better. And remembering that we talked about offering internships and work experience. So do become a member of AMGC. It's completely free to join, and you can see we've got a national network and it's growing by the day. Certainly some great businesses out there transforming to advanced manufacturers right across Australia. Log into Manufacturing Academy and see some of the latest works going on there. Don't forget the COVID-19 Manufacturers Response Register if you're in need of medical PPE or other site safety equipment. That's growing all the time, so a real connector. Looking forward to next week's next chapter in the 10 Ways report. Feel free again to reach out to any of us on LinkedIn, Twitter and all the rest. There's plenty going on in manufacturing. It's certainly been a big year, and I know there's much more to come. Can I thank all our panelists for joining us today and encourage you all to connect, and let's keep talking. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.